The battle over the Woolworths development in Nelson Bay has been a long and controversial one. A number of public meetings were held in support of the Woolworths supermarket and opposing the Port Stephens Shire Council Salamander Bay commercial development. Residents said they didn't need both shopping centres and they preferred the Sabimo option. But that came with its own problems, such as increased traffic flow. To combat this, Council imposed a number of unpalatable conditions on the development, such as a contribution of $296,000 towards a traffic study and a town centre bypass. The developer decided to fight these conditions in the Land and Environment Court, but today Woolworths announced that it wasn't worth the trouble, and it told Sabimo it didn't consider the project to be viable. Shire Clerk of Port Stephens Council John Walsh says this vindicates Council's stand. He says Council's consultants, Centennial Projects, predicted that the Sabimo project wouldn't be economically feasible when it was first presented to Council 2 years ago. The announcement comes on the eve of a by-election in the Shire to replace Innes Crichton, who resigned for a number of reasons, including the conditions that were imposed on the Woolworths supermarket project. Mr Crichton is standing for the seat again.
More than 600 people took part in the annual Anzac Day ceremony at the Sandgate Cemetery, held by the Waratah, Mayfield and Shortland sub-branches of the RSL. Veterans from all wars marched from the corner of Wallsend Road to the War Cemetery. They were accompanied by the Waratah Mayfield Brass Band, the Newcastle Police Boys Band, units from the Army Reserve and cadets from the Army, the Navy and the Air Force. On reaching the War Cemetery, the marchers formed up and joined a gathering of civic and military dignitaries around the cenotaph. Many of the men carried wreaths to lay in honour of the men who gave their lives fighting for our country. The opening address was made by Waratah High School student Milan Adamczyk, who praised the men who died for Australia. The annual drill competition for reserve units, the Bray Shield, went to the University of New South Wales Regiment for the 4th consecutive year. Today's ceremony was the start of a week of commemoration, which will culminate on Friday with Anzac Day.
The enduring appeal of steam locomotives attracted thousands of local and interstate visitors to Maitland. Steam locos like the Newcastle Flyer made daily runs from Sydney and Newcastle to Maitland and then shuttle rides to Paterson. Maitland was chosen to host the Steamfest because of its long connection with the old boilers and historic South Maitland railways. The city buzzed with loco fever. Church Street was closed off so traders could sell their wares from stalls, and Maitland's motels and hotels were full. Jazz bands provided the soundtrack for what turned out to be a highly successful and memorable weekend.
state player, Sally has great all-round ability and can cover any position within the game. She bats well, with a great variety of shots, something she's carried into the game from her outdoor experience. She bowls extremely well too. It's been said she could well make the men's A-grade team with her bowling alone. She keeps wickets expertly too and is a great fielder. Obviously keen on her sport, as she's been outstanding since her school days, Sally wants to go to the top in everything she does. Which do you prefer of the four sports that you've made the grade in?
I think the outdoor cricket, with the achievement of the Australian side last year, plus the Australian squad at the moment, it's sort of helps with the motivation side of things to get into the Australian side.
Sure, but you've got the national titles coming up in indoor cricket, 1st of June,
Yep.
An Australian blazer again, do you think?
Oh, I hope so. I think I might be a bit of a chance, but nobody knows for sure what the selectors are thinking, so I hope so.
How do you fit it all in?
Um,
I mean, squash is a 12-month of year sport, and
Yeah.
so's this.
Outdoors just summer,
Right.
so it gives me a bit more time in the winter. I just have to, put everything around each other.
Yeah, every night of the week playing something or
Yeah.
other. What about the touch football?
In a break at the moment, starts in May, so been relaxed on that for a while. I'm not playing representative at the moment, but hope to get back into that soon.
When are you going to take up some other sport so I can warn the people to watch out for Sally
When
Griffiths?
I retire from the other sports.
You've got to take up lawn bowls and we'll be back in a couple of years doing that.
A few years yet.
For music lovers, tonight's performance heralds the start of the year's rich programme of events. The Hunter Orchestra will mount 4 full seasons, plus a children's opera, an ambitious programme in this only its 2nd year of operation. Last year, the orchestra established its reputation, secured government funding, and has since formed a permanent nucleus of players. The orchestra's success is due in part to a policy of playing music that will attract new listeners. Tonight's Amadeus programme is no exception, featuring music from the film of the same name.
Many people discovered there was music they loved, and we are playing most of the music they would have heard in the film, extending it after the fade out so that you'll hear the whole thing, and also adding some things which are delightful Mozart which weren't in the film.
So once again, it's a popular programme with pieces that most people would recognise.
Oh, it's a very much popular programme. One of the items I think was Top of the Pops after the Amadeus film.
The programme also features a guest appearance by Australian pianist Rachel Valar, who will perform Mozart's piano concerto in D minor. After tonight's concert, the orchestra will take its music to the Hunter Valley with a performance in Singleton this Thursday.
Vehicles, including a cement truck, were involved in a multiple pile-up on Lake Road near the Glendale Crossroads. Police say a vehicle making a turn off Lake Road was struck from behind, and then, due to the heavy flow of traffic, 3 other vehicles became involved, creating a concertina of damaged bonnets, bumper bars and boots. The cement truck then came over the brow of the hill, but could not avoid colliding with the vehicles. It also clipped another vehicle travelling in the opposite direction. A fleet of police cars and ambulances were quick to respond, and 4 people, including a young girl, were taken to Wallsend Hospital for treatment of minor injuries. The accident happened around 3:30, and there were lengthy delays for motorists travelling along Lake Way near the crossroads.
The Newcastle Out of Workers is about to come to the rescue of hundreds of young unemployed people who don't have the use of a phone and therefore cannot leave a contact number at job interviews. But that's about to change, because from next Monday, the cottage at Fort Scratchley will become the base for an answering service, designed to reduce the risk of an unemployed person missing out on a job because they were unable to be contacted.
Well, I don't think we'd be doing it if there wasn't a need. It's one of those things where unemployed people come to us with some sort of problem, and we do what we can to alleviate it.
Are young unemployed people who don't have a phone contact number discriminated against by prospective employers?
I think they're disadvantaged. It makes it difficult, I think, pardon me, in 1986 when you haven't got a phone.
So you're a portable answering service?
Something like that, yes.
Martial Arts Academy at Gosford, will be riding his bike from Gosford to Melbourne on May the 18th. His aim, to raise at least $20,000 for the Children's Cancer and Leukaemia Fund. Mark says he's been training for the last 3 months, riding to Sydney and Newcastle as build-ups to the big event. He plans to tackle the gruelling 40-hour journey by riding 6 to 8 hours a day. Mark and colleague Gary Johnson will also be staging a martial arts expo on May 17 to help in their quest for money. But Mark says despite his intense training and organisation, he still needs more donations.
And so far from sponsors, we've only got about 6,000. A lot of people are helping out. We've sent about 30 letters to major companies, and they've all said no, which in one way they probably financially can't afford it. Again, they probably get a lot of people trying to get sponsors.
It's been more than 4 years since 31-year-old Elizabeth Dixon from Medford was found murdered in the Ashtonfield residential estate. Her hands had been tied with football boot laces and she'd been stabbed 27 times in her back and abdomen. Police say there was also evidence she'd been struck several times about the head. Her body was found here in her car by a passing jogger 3 days after the murder. She was last seen at a local liquor store at Green Hills on the night of Saturday the 3rd of April 1982, after a night playing squash with friends. Today's coronial inquiry was told that police have called for an expert forensic report from the United States. That report has been compiled by a leading analyst in blood splatter patterns. He's examining blood patterns found on the body and in the car after the murder. That report and other evidence police hope to produce when the inquiry resumes on June the 18th.
Lloyd Moffat says he's put a lot of hard work and money, some $400,000, into his restaurant over the 9 years he's leased the old pavilion. He says he's kept his lease agreement, and apart from a few isolated cases, the kiosk has been open. He believes all the trouble is being caused by a small group of agitators. Mr Moffat says he's disappointed and angry that no one from the Town Clerk's Coordination Committee or the administrator have been to inspect the restaurant.
I put my lease in, my application for renewal in about 10 months ago, and I've had a couple of casual meetings with the town clerk, but no one's come down to inspect it and have a look at the place, or the committee of the council who recommended not to extend my lease. They haven't been down to see how attractive it is, or how's the trade, or do the kids come up, or what time do I open. They're only going on the odd complaint.
So what does the future hold for Mr Moffat?
I won't walk away because I've just put too much in. As far as my future, if I lose it, well, I guess there's not much I can do in Newcastle. I mean, I've worked hard here, and if there's a lack of confidence in my trading, well, I mean, what can I do? Go and start another one somewhere else?
So Lloyd Moffat intends to keep fighting, but if he does happen to be unsuccessful in regaining the lease, he says the city administration and the people of Newcastle will be sorry when he's gone.
Last night at the Swansea RSL Club, hundreds of local residents gathered to form the Neighbourhood Watch program for their area. The public meeting was addressed by police and representatives of the local Lions Club, which was instrumental in setting the program up. The program is simply an organised community scheme where the residents keep an eye on their neighbours' property and as such take responsibility for community security. The Lions Club began the task of organising the program 5 weeks ago. They door-knocked 60% of the area's 2,700 houses to evaluate support and to inform residents of their plans. According to the Lions project leader for the scheme, Peter Halverson, both the police and residents were keen to get it established.
Talking to people as we've been doing the door knock, there definitely is a need in the community because everybody that we've talked to has said that they're very pleased that it's been set up and that it's well past time.
How hopeful are you that it will prove a success from here?
Well, past projects of this kind have proved successful. An 80% reduction in the crime rate in some areas where it's been run. So we're hopeful that we'll get that sort of results in Swansea as well.
Five-year-old Walter Lowe will not be marching in tomorrow's Anzac Day parade. Despite being a veteran of World War I, a troublesome leg injury has in recent years hindered his involvement. Mr Lowe enlisted in the army in 1915 at the age of 24. He left his home at Marengo near Orange and was sent to England, then France and Belgium, where he saw active service in the trenches.
If you told people what you lived in the trenches, they'd laugh at you. Now those trenches were half full of water. They had what they call a fire sap along the bank. We either sat on that or stood on it. If you poked your head up, you got a bullet through it.
Do you think the war was worthwhile?
No, I don't. Have a look at the carnage. That's what the people don't understand, the carnage of that war. And then all our personnel slaughtered, about 400,000 or 500,000. Don't sound much, does it? But when you see them marching along.
Mr Lowe avoids reading books and watching films portraying the war years. He says he'd rather forget. However, he believes Anzac Day is an important tribute to those men who died in combat.
The fellas that I enlisted with, the fellas that I met up with in the army, and the memory of those particular people, that has a big bearing on it.
Hello, I'm Mark Warren. Today, Federal Communications Minister Michael Duffy officially opened this new UHF television translator at Gosford. The new translator will significantly improve television reception to several areas of the Central Coast.
Join Ray Deneen and Anna Manzoni for all the news tonight at 6.
Hundreds of people gathered under a full moon and a perfect dawn to pay their tributes. Former diggers marching along King Street heralded the start of this morning's commemoration. The years may have taken toll on their numbers, but not their pride, each one carrying a memory of a fallen comrade. The Dean of Newcastle, the Very Reverend Graham Lawrence, led the service in prayer. The address was given by Bob Tyler, President of Legacy in the region, while State Member for Newcastle Arthur Blake delivered the eulogy. In Anzac Day tradition, wreaths and tributes were placed on the memorial by politicians and representatives of community groups and the local RSL sub-branches. Each tribute to the memory of our war dead.
In Gosford today, the fallen soldiers were remembered in bright sunshine as their comrades marched up Man Street towards the cenotaph. There were about 150 returned servicemen and women marching today, and organisers say it was the largest Anzac Day march in Gosford for many years. Contingents from the Air Training Corps, the Girl Guides, the Brownies, the Scouts and the Cubs marched proudly behind their flags to the beat of the Gosford City Band. The old soldiers were pleased and surprised by the number of young people who attended the service, and they hope that the tide has turned in opposition to the homage paid to those soldiers who made the supreme sacrifice. Lieutenant Commander Hermans, who gave the address, says it's those men and women who should be remembered today. He says Australia's birth as a nation happened on the blood-stained shores of Turkey, and there were tens of thousands of Australians who were killed or maimed in the assault on Gallipoli. Commander Hermans says that in 1915, the growing nation of Australia, with its population of just 5 million, sent some 350,000 young men and women to fight in the Great War. There was a 68% casualty rate. He says that in no war since has there been such a drastic loss, but World War II, the Korean, the Malaysian and the Vietnam Wars all recorded terrible carnage. And he says it's for this reason we must remember them, lest we forget.
Hans Meyer stood with his prize at the club way station next to Swansea Channel this afternoon, still marvelling like everyone else at the huge size of the beast. The tiger shark is almost 4 metres long and weighs a massive 487 kilograms. That's only 20 kilograms off the world record tiger shark catch on a 15-kilo line. It's certainly a record for the club and one of the biggest fish ever caught in this region. Mr. Meyer won his battle with the tiger shark after 3 exhausting hours yesterday afternoon. The shark was so tough that several gaff hooks bounced off its sandpaper-like skin. Judging by its size, the shark could be as much as 150 years old. Sadly for the chef, something that old doesn't make fine eating, and he will keep only its gigantic jaws.